All aboard! Welcome to the All Aboard podcast. I am your host, Brandon DeFreitas. I am here with a couple of esteemed guests, Edwin Pimentel and John Canelos. How are we doing, boys?
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Doing good, doing good.
Go
Happy
first,
Friday.
Edwin. You go first.
Well, here's the thing on this podcast. Number one, I don't think anyone's had their names dragged through the mud or their teams dragged through the mud the way you guys have. So we wanted to make sure we set aside some time. We brought you guys on. It'll be all feel good like it is on every episode, as my brother accuses me of. And then on the next episode, I'll probably be liable to come around and backstab you guys again and throw you back down into the mud.
Only
With
fair.
that, with that said, though, I wanted to open up the floor, and I didn't even let you guys complete your introductions. So I will now back off into the corner.
I'll, I'm good. Good to be here. Got a lot going on this in the league these days. A lot going on at home. Had my sixth wedding anniversary dinner tonight, so that's why I'm spruced up a little bit on a Friday work from home day. So it's going well. Good to see you guys. It was great seeing everybody at the draft. Missed those who couldn't make it, except for maybe one person. But
I
I'm,
don't even know.
I'm kidding.
It could be anyone, but we're just gonna
Oh,
leave it up
good.
for interpretation.
Had to throw the first chirp in. How you
Nice,
doing,
nice.
Edwin? You have a big month.
Yes, sir. Doing good. I mean, sleep deprived with my toddler, but baby number two on the way. This June 19th is a due date, so that's next Wednesday. So your boy's just hanging on while he can. It was great seeing people at the draft. They gave me life as I kind of pointed out I had 8 beers in the span of 3 hours. Your boy was crushing. Had to get them in before I can. Currently doing some more right now. Just steeping the alcohol to numb the pain of my sell off this season, as you guys are probably well aware. There you go.
John's
Yeah.
ready for Father's Day weekend
Oh,
over
yeah.
there.
One weekend a year where I matter. So,
Cash in the brownie points.
well, hope it's all going well. Hope the wife is doing well.
Thank you. Thank you. Doing well. So far, so good. So just getting down to the home stretch.
Well, guys, I am flattered. Here I am weekly coming on, trashing your teams. I got John here fitting in the episode prior to an anniversary dinner. I have Edwin, could have a second baby at any moment. He's taking time for the podcast. I mean, like, this is what makes this league and this podcast special.
Commitment. 11,
Priorities.
11 people all committed to making this league great.
So I
That's
don't
what
want to
it takes.
put you guys all on the spot right away. But I think a natural place to start, Edwin, you have been selling. You have essentially had, I don't know, you have this like carnival atmosphere. You keep telling people, step right up, step right up. Some people have stepped up, some trades have gone through. How do you feel about your offseason, some of the trades that are made? And we can dig into some of the big ones too. And what do you want to accomplish here between now and week one?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the mic. I feel like you said in some previous podcasts, my team is catching strays, and I'd like to think I play a clean game for the most part. I bark back when I get barked at usually. So that's probably when I get in the ring. But for the most part, I try to stick on the positive. But it seems to be one of those things that I took a strategy that just zagged with the rest of the league, RB heavy. Didn't really go invest in the QBs, and it didn't quite pan out. No, not making excuses, but QB injuries seemed to be a theme for every season I had. Coming up short, last season, almost made my third final, less than a point. So it's a successful franchise so far, but not haven't met the goal that matters the most. Obviously, mid-season had to do what it took, had to hang on. I already bought in, right? Like made the big off-season acquisition with Henry Hopkins, and I was just like, all right, I can't sell now. Got to go for it. Made the Baker Mayfield infamous three-team trade. Got that in there for the league, for the history books have that going on, and I shot my shot, and it almost worked. At least to make it to the finals again. But took a look at my team, figured I'm like, hey, there's some other teams in the league that is their time now to step in and buy. My team's older, probably made more sense to step back, sell off, and then rebuild from there. Kicked off the offseason, I thought, with a bang with the big Tyreek Hill trade, and George Kittle as well. But since then, it's been fairly quiet. I've had some inquisitions, some teams have come around, but nothing really has materialized just yet. So from now to week 1, I'm just hoping that other teams take a look, see if they have enough that they think they can go for it this year. We can open up the dialogue and they can step right up, as I say, try to just looking for fair market value, just make a fair deal. If you can retool, then you can go for it. Not taking any particular shots, but I feel like there's some teams that I expected would be buyers this season that haven't been buyers yet. It's something to think about as our whole league dynamic right now. We have sort of like a 50% contending, 50% selling, maybe more like a 60-40. I don't know exactly where that's going to pan out. So it's a tough sellers market, I'd say, because it seems like we have a lot of sellers available and not as many people buying in.
It definitely has turned out that way this offseason. And I'm more on the 60-40 because I've seen my boy John here doing some buying this offseason. Give him credit where credit is due. I see some others we've discussed, like John Will Tam. I don't know. It's just like just happy to have a lottery pick year in and year out. And at what point are they going to start buying in for vets? That's the question. So,
well, here's my other thought with that. It's like someone's going to make the playoffs that isn't really trying to make the playoffs, and they're not going to have a lottery pick. And, at that point, it's like if you're making the playoffs, like you should go for it in theory, but I feel like teams are probably going to wait for the season, see how their team stacks up. If they get hot, then maybe they'll buy in. But for now, it seems like I think it's just part of the analysis for some of those teams that haven't bought in yet.
I know we have
John,
a
go
very
ahead.
interesting league where we've talked about this before, but it's what 7 of us have worked at PwC. So we have this kind of accountant, tax nerd, conservative mentality where, and that's how I operate my life. But when it comes to fantasy, I'm just running and gunning. That's why I make some of these crazy trades that like people can't reconcile. So I get dragged for, like you were saying. But then there's like Tam and Mark, not to name names, but they still roll that way in this dynasty league where they're very deliberate about everything they do and they're smart about it, but it's like almost passive. So you're like, all right, when is it going to happen? Mark actually did man up and throw his chips in the trade deadline like 2 years ago, but then turned around this
I
year and
remember that.
rather than trying to go for a run. He had kind of already failed. And then Tam, it's like he kind of just waits for an injury to happen, like Brees Hall, and then someone else, and then Hawkinson, and then he decides he's going to sell. So he's never really bought in. So the conservative nature of us, of the league, has created a weird dynamic where there's like 4 teams that have the capital to buy, and they're just not buying. So
It's funny too how like I'm thinking high level, like I do feel that way where there is that and it's kind of slowed down. It's slowed down the vet market in particular. But then when you take 1,000 step foot view of like the league, there's been a lot of moves this offseason. I mean, Mahomes got traded, Lamar got traded, Tyreek Hill got traded. Like I feel like we've been catching our stride. So it's interesting that like we still like I feel like there's still meat on the bone in terms of activity in the league that can and I don't know how we achieve it, or maybe it's just like, the ebbs and flows of the market. But it is funny to be sitting here and be like, wow, there's not a big like market of buyers. And it's like, holy crap, we've had some massive trades this offseason.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's rookie draft hype season. So these picks, the 2024 picks, have never been more valuable. So I
Yeah.
know I had a few seconds and I was clutching onto them like Schmiegel. It's like, no.
My precious season.
And then in like week 4, I'll be like, damn it, I wish I had Joe Mixon for 2-1 or something like that, or Derrick Henry for 2-1, maybe, if you would have even accepted that. So I think, yeah.
Well, I think that was part of the bit that Brandon ran. I wasn't even pushing the narrative for Derrick Henry, and then all of a
Oh,
sudden it became a thing, and I had to all of a sudden defend the value that I hadn't even pushed per se. But I think that
what are you trying to say?
what I'm saying is the 2024 picks definitely were highly touted and valued, and I had no idea on these college players. Full disclosure for the league, I don't know anything for these college guys short of what I listen to on these podcasts. So like my entire success in fantasy in redraft, is what I'm trying to translate to dynasty, is really comes on just like the effort and commitment and trying to make the moves. I take risks. That's how I've had success in redraft. That's how I've had success in football and baseball. But like, that's the way I approach it. Is just you got to be active, you got to be committed. In this case, it hasn't panned out, and that's why I'm kind of looking to reset. But
Wouldn't say
even
that.
I,
3 successful deep playoff runs. Cumulatively, you might have the most success of any team in the league in
so,
terms.
so
I
far,
think
yes,
going into this year,
regular season success, yes.
Yeah, of course, Jimmy is top
That's
dog right now, but
I
he
could be
didn't
wrong.
playoff
I
year
took a look
one.
at it. Sorry, John. I didn't mean to cut you off there. I took a look early this offseason, and I think Edwin had the most cumulative wins, like after 3 seasons.
Well,
Sure.
that's part of why I chimed in. I think during the playoff run, there was like a comment made. I think it was Jimmy and Alex were like, "We're the best teams. Good to see us in here." And somehow taking slight at like my team. Like I think I had more points than Alex, and I was just like, "Well, I mean, yeah, sorry for existing, guys, but I'm still here." It's like in hindsight, I almost wish I didn't like push the sell as quickly as I did. Granted, I ended up in the division that's projected to be tougher, so it may not have even mattered. I may not have had as much success head to head, but it's not like my team was just dragging and just pure luck got in there. It's again, I tried to make the moves to put myself in that position. It didn't pan out, but it's I'd like to think I gave it an honest shot while my window was active.
That's the great juggle of dynasty, the veterans versus the youth versus the draft picks, and cycles throughout the year, kind of ebbs and flows. What's the most valuable? So
Yeah,
right
and
now,
apparently this draft class was like the GOAT draft class, which I had no idea last year. I was just like, yeah, Mark, let's deal. That's happy hour.
Mark knew. Mark knew that his quarterback room would be ravaged and that he would have the perfect opportunity. He three-eyed ravened us. Bran Stark.
Edwin's walking into the happy hour, and Mark's unbuttoning a couple buttons on the top, and he's like, "Oh, I got him."
You want another you got another beer?
Yeah. Let's throw a shot in between the next round.
I'm looking here, Edwin. And I know one deal we talked pre-show that we wanted to bring up that hasn't gotten a lot of press was the Tyreek Hill deal. This is looking pretty strong a couple of months after it happened. I think at the time I was lukewarm on it for you, but now as I look at it, I'm like, this looks really nice. So for Tyreek Hill, and you put in Ty Chandler as a sweetener to get it through, Hill and Chandler, you got Jahan Dotson, a 2025 first, your boy's 2025 first, and a 2026 first from John B. So 2 first-round picks and a young receiver who's a good separator. Matt Harmon likes him. So I think that's pretty damn solid value for a receiver who's starting to get into his 30s and by his own admission might only have a couple seasons left.
Yeah, that hurt. That hurt, obviously, from my perspective, letting go of Tyreek. And it's one of those players that you just want to ride off into the sunset. I figured, to your point, like he is 30. He mentioned that he's only going to play 2 more seasons, potentially. Who knows? He might change his mind. But then, you start seeing some of this off seasons, all the storylines. He's like asking to fight Jake Paul. You don't know what's gonna happen with like if he goes the Antonio Brown route. Like not saying that I sold damaged goods, but because I think he's gonna be elite, and I think he's gonna be elite as long as he's playing. But if I didn't consider my team strong enough to go for it this year, I figured I'd try to cash in with the max value that I was getting at the time. It projected to be too late first, so that may not work out. If they happen to creep in to be mid first, that might be a more comparable value. Dotson, I figured I'm just trying to bank on a player that's done it before, at least had some success his rookie year. He had a down year last year, so that's scary to think that maybe he won't pan out. But just figure, hoping that if he can at least be the wide receiver 2 in that room, and then those first round picks, maybe they pan out to be a little bit closer to be mid versus late, depending on how these seasons play out. Sorry, John, I think I cut you off.
No, I was just agreeing. I like this trade for both sides. Love that John B's being aggressive, throwing two firsts at it. You got out of Tyreek at a good time, I think. Like you said, he's kind of a wild card. All this off the field stuff you see, there's so much smoke, and he just kind of never gets in trouble, dating back to earlier in his career too. It's just been like, when is he gonna get in trouble for one of these reports that we get? And he was kind of banged up at times last year too. I feel like especially down the stretch, like around Thanksgiving, he was dealing with injuries, and so good trade for both sides. And if you're kind of rebuilding with an eye towards a lottery pick, it's a good piece to trade off because he kind of weakens your team in a way. But that's the point, is that you want to go from the middle to kind of the lower end. So I like the trade. Ty Chandler's an interesting piece. At the time, I was like, oh, damn, Edwin just gave away RB1 on the Vikings, but then Aaron Jones showed up. So it's kind of clear they don't view him as like a RB1. He's just a tandem kind of back. So you sniped him from me back when he was a rookie on the taxi squad. I tried to do some roster management. I think I dropped him for like some ship on QB, like Skylar Thompson or Thomas or something, thinking that I could then add Ty Chandler back, and you just snapped, got right in there.
I scour where I
I
can.
was gonna say that. He looked really good at the end, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I like Dotson. I mean, what was he, the 17th overall pick in the draft? He's only year three, new quarterback, blue chip prospect quarterback. So good trade for both sides. I liked it.
Yeah, and welcome to the light, Edwin, in terms of cheering against the total dirtbag that is Tyreek Hill. I mean, like, I can't imagine having to root for that guy. I already couldn't stand him. To John's point, some of the off-field stuff, we won't cover it. We're not talking about that on the podcast, but not a good guy.
Right.
Like, objectively not a good guy. And at some point he's gonna get bagged for something, you imagine. And as the Jalen Waddle owner now, I have even more to benefit off of it. And as you traded him away, and my long-term fantasy nemesis, John B, I would just, that guy just needs to go away. He's awful. So, one of the few players I will admit that like I actively root to not have him in the NFL anymore because he's just like a total bad person. But that's as far as I'm going on the
Doesn't
podcast.
help that he's on a division rival for the Pats. Not that
Yeah.
we're relevant right now, but doesn't help.
Yeah, so that kicked things off really. Just making that move alone, already my team is like in the bottom tier projected points. That's how impactful he is. So for John B, obviously it made a lot of sense. Like his team is stacked, he's ready for a run. I think for him it doesn't matter the off-field stuff. If he's playing another 2 seasons of elite wide receiver, like that's it's a game changer for him. He's looking scary with that lineup with CD and Tyreek in there. So. Um,
Oh, he's feeling himself.
I'm
He's
sure
feeling himself.
I'm sure the blood is flowing.
It's fair. His rebuild has been picturesque. Not even a rebuild, just kind of like a steady
Yeah.
increase into contender status from the kind of early on struggles. I don't know if it was a productive struggle, as the term goes per se, but just been constant linear progression throughout this dynasty league. And I'm jealous. It's been fun to watch.
It does show like some, and I think John B's done a fantastic job. Like, all joking aside, I think he's deserving of having a top shot in this league. He's really built his way up. But to take a more salty point of view, I would say like you can sort of see a little bit of the luck that goes into it too. Like Justin Fields getting super hot at the end of that one year, gets someone like John I to like overvalue him and then give you a first round pick and Bryce for him. And then a lot of luck too with Jordan Love, who a lot of people speculated on. And I only gave it to him as a throw in. I was like, John, that one year Dak got that injury early in the year and we had the hard quarterback limit. I was a competitor and I was like, I need a roster space and I at the time I was like, I need Mitchell Trubisky or I might not even have a starting quarterback. So I was like, you
Um,
know what? I don't know what's going to happen. Like I thought he was an interesting hold. I was like, he's coming up, his fifth year option. Maybe Rodgers is gone. I had done all that legwork, and I was like, John, like I'll just give him to you as part of the deal, but like know that I would like to hold him too. Ends up coming out and becoming an elite young quarterback. Like when you hit on stuff like that, you can compound your wins and turn it into what he's done. So he's done a great job with that, great job being aggressive. But my overall point is you do need to run into some sort of luck to have like a big win or a big step forward like that.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up too because you had him, and then you were just forced into a position, with the QB limit. It had that you had to make a transaction
Yep.
and make your move, and that's one of those that you look back on and you're like, how did that happen? And you're looking back at the trade value, you're
It
like,
looks
wow,
real
like,
bad.
and I flipped it for Lamar Jackson, and it's just like, you go from free agent to just flipping, to get one of the top 6 QBs now with Lamar Jackson in his lineup. So that's quite the return.
Is this a
And
good
that
time for me to defend my Lamar Jackson
yep.
voodoo?
Come in, come
All
in.
right. Okay. So I traded for Mahomes. My lineup, top and bottom, QB1, Superflex looked great, obviously. Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, sexy. And then everything in between was shitty still. So I'm in a deep rebuild. So I'm like, all right, what if I take a slight page out of John I. Travers' book and tear down from Lamar to a QB and pick up a blue chip wide receiver or something like that. So I'm looking around the league and I see John B has Jordan Love. I know that he likes the running type quarterbacks with Justin Field and Kyler and things like that. So then I see Jordan Love, who I'm like the Packers are my NFC team. Long story, family relations kind of thing. So I'm like, ooh, maybe I could tear down from like a QB who's Lamar's like QB5, QB6 in dynasty rankings to QB 10, 11, pick up some good assets. And so initially I had my eye on like T. Higgins or someone like that, but he just wouldn't budge. So I had to take kind of a basket of assets, a basket swap, if you will. Tax joke. And so we negotiated John B's, and that was another thing when I like who's a reasonable trade partner here, and he's a good guy, honorable, all that. So I'm like, all right, let's do this. And so just comparing Lamar and Love, I see Lamar at age 27 starting to get a little long in the tooth. His play style is so risky, and I'm in a deep rebuild. So I'm like, okay, 2 years from now, what is Lamar going to look like? What did he look like for the last 3 years? QB 10, QB 15, QB 14 in the 3 years leading up to this MVP season. And people conveniently forget that he was a massive disappointment in 2021 and 2022. He's a unicorn, amazing player. John B should be thrilled to have him, and I think he is. But for me, staring down a rebuild, I'm like, all right, one or two more of these seasons where he kind of picks up an injury. His style of play is conducive to injuries. He's not Josh Allen, where he's a freight train. He's kind of a slender guy, freak athlete, special player. But 2 years from now, when he's 29, how's it look? Meanwhile, Jordan Love, 2 years younger, I think he actually finished either right next to him. So Lamar was QB 4 or 5, and Jordan Love was QB 5, I think. So they were right next to each other in the rankings this year. Lamar had him on points per game, but so I'm kind of big brain, galaxy braining myself here, thinking that in 2 years, Jordan Love might be more valuable than Lamar if he keeps on this trajectory. He's about to get a new deal, a new long-term extension, if the reports are true. His wide receiver group is, I would say, the deepest and most diverse in terms of talent of any quarterback in the league. It's famous. Like this offseason, a huge topic is who's going to be the wide receiver one in Green Bay. Like I don't think they need a wide receiver one. They roll 6 deep at solid playmaking wide receivers, whether it's Reed, who's a stud, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, my boy, or Bo
Don't forget
Melton
Wicks
and Dante
Dontavian
getting all that,
Wicks.
all the
everyone's
hype,
favorite
all the
sleeper.
hype.
Then you shift to tight end, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and good running backs on their team, stable
Jacobs.
organization, good coach. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And what I picked up in return, people might give me grief for, but I like Jerry Jeudy a lot. He's very talented. I know Harmon has soured on him in the last year, but a year ago, I think he went for a first round pick in our league. So it's a valuable player, 25 years old. He
I was
has
gonna say,
since
like, I think
gotten,
at one point he was a first, like he was traded for first.
yeah, he's got a new deal since that trade was made. He's wide receiver 2 in Cleveland. I picked up a second, future second. It's down the road, but those assets just increase in value as you go. And then I got Aaron Jones, who I flipped to Jimmy for a second, and Michael Wilson, and I threw in a third. So it was Lamar and third, and like 2/4 and Tank Bigsby. So some low end assets for Love, 2 seconds, Michael Wilson, Jerry Judy. So you think I'm crazy? There's a method to my madness. I got to take a stance and go with it. I think 3 years from now, Jordan Love will be more valuable than Lamar Jackson. And that's when I'm going to hopefully be back contending. Hopefully 2 years, but so
I love this.
let me
I
have
love
it.
the stance.
Let me have it.
Um, I have a couple of follow-ups. Number one, extremely impressed you rattled off that trade like off the top of your head because I have it up and I was ready to jump in and be like, okay, here's the trade. You just rattled it off the head like a stud. So number one, fantastic job there. My second follow-up is the Packers fandom. You said due to family relations, and that, sparked in my head. I'm like, oh, family relations. What's going on, John? I need to ask about that.
It's so my mom's family, they're all from Montana, so they don't have any sports teams. So they've just loved the Packers forever. So literally half of my family is Packers fans. So I'm like,
Okay.
8 years old, and the Packers are sick in the early 90s. Brett Favre is a stud. Most unpopular opinion I have is he's my favorite player ever, aside from Tom Brady, of course. So that's I've just been a Packers fan since like I was like 6 years old. They're in my NFC team. If it was Patriots versus Packers, it's Patriots every time. But so and then I like Aaron Rodgers, obviously. Drafted him in the startup draft. So it's kind of a team you respect from afar, but still the hometown
Nice.
team. But Edwin,
Yeah.
what's your take? Let me have it. Call me an
No,
idiot.
no. No. I definitely don't think you're an idiot. I think looking at it, getting the youth and the draft capital, I think that's key, especially if you're aiming to rebuild, right? Because like you mentioned with Lamar, you know, he's not old, obviously. He's only I think 27. But with that play style, who knows if injuries, may shorten some of these other seasons. And then while you're going for it, it's great because that upside, that ceiling that he has, I mean, he can put up like 40 points any given week. That's something you need if you're contending. That's what makes a difference. That's the type of player that if you're gonna go for it, you need those difference makers. You can't just kind of have players that middle about. So I think for John B, it made sense. I think giving up the youth for him and the draft capital, it's the price to pay. I think Judy, who knows what's going to happen with the Cleveland Browns there. That offense is kind of just always questionable to me. I don't know what it is exactly. Like it seems like they bring in guys and either don't know how to use them or it's just the QB play. They sometimes just can't click it. Amari Cooper made it happen, but it's like with Elijah Moore when they made the move, it's like kind of just disappeared. And I don't know. I feel like he's a talented guy, and like they could have made that work. But so that one I feel like is more of the just the scratch ticket that you got to throw in and see what happens. I was in discussions with John B about Judy, and I considered him as well as that throw in, and ultimately chose to kind of go with Dotson and split that way. Just because I feel like I saw at least more from Dotson in that rookie year. But like I said, Judy went for first a year ago, so it's like the talent, the youth is there. It's just a matter of can they use him right, put him in the right position so that if he does pan out, I mean, then the trade looks even better on your side.
I didn't expect Edwin throwing strays at you on the pod. Like, oh, I like Dotson way more than Judy, but yeah.
In my
Well, listen,
initial, yeah,
it,
Dotson was. I'm sorry.
no. I was gonna say like I just felt that personally was the move for me. I was looking at like, all right, between these guys, like who would I think I can try to get useful at, get some return, and just banking on like if they've done it once, maybe they can do it again. If he looks more like year two, then I'm screwed. But if he goes back to his earlier ways, new QB, Obviously, he's a rookie, so that's always the tough part. Like, can they support the offense? But I figured, it seems like the coaching staff, still likes him and still want to use him and give him another shot. So I'm hoping that can click.
Jerry Jeudy gets, I feel like, undue hate. I mean, last year he had 750 yards receiving. That's not like a terrible year. He's inconsistent. He kind of deals with drops. He definitely deals with injuries, but their whole organization has been borderline dysfunctional his whole career. So hopefully he's just turn the page, brand new start. 900 plus yards the year before. So I think as long as he's a flex player, that's good. Dotson was initially in discussions with John B. Calvin Ridley was, but the age scared me away. I'm glad I didn't because now I wouldn't want him and Levis.
Well,
I
that's
have
a stack, though.
I know I have a weird aversion to stacks typically. Like I have Dobbs and Love, Mahomes and Marquise Brown, but like I don't know. Sometimes I try to avoid having players on the same team, which probably doesn't make sense.
We've definitely, I remember when we co-managed our championship team. We'll never take that away from us, John. Co-managed championship. You were big on the
Shove.
spreading the risk. You were definitely a big spread the risk guy. I remember from
Maybe that's a
managing.
fantasy baseball carryover. Got to talk fantasy baseball at least once on this. But I'm just like, I hate when I have multiple players on the same team in fantasy baseball. But maybe that's like a weakness, a blind
Superstition.
spot.
Quick
I,
fantasy baseball though, I've done a horrible job setting my lineup, but I noticed there's a new AI feature that will set your lineup for the
it
week.
helps.
It's game changer for me.
Co-pilot.
I could do that straight on the toilet. I'm good to
Hey,
go. Like
there's
Among
no
other things.
excuse.
so fantasy baseball commission. I'm clean. I've gone to rehab. I'm ready to go. I can set my lineup with AI now.
You've been pretty good the last few years. You turned over a new leaf early on in the whatever league history. You just didn't care, so you'd finish like 4-99 every year. But now you're putting together
No,
competitive teams, and
it's not. See, I have to defend myself a little bit now. It's not that I didn't care. It's that like the day in day out grind, which is like if you go back to the beginning, that's what Edwin says. I'm gonna get you on the grind. Like the day in and day out grind of setting the lineup, that's what kills me in fantasy baseball. Versus like football, I can do it once a week. Like I don't need to swap, and I don't need to swap pitchers in and out. Oh, Lucas, what's up, man? Edward, I think you got to
Some
talk to get on the screen. There
some
you go.
someone decided to make an appearance.
got a
Hey,
dump truck shirt. Love it.
there you go. Got
Yes.
Snoopy. He's got,
Love it.
Nice.
yeah.
Good looking kid.
Thank you. He's it's like you guys talking baseball. Like want to get in on this, right? There we go.
This is going on
Uh,
YouTube, so I don't want to be too ambitious with my comments, but it's not a surprise. It's a good looking kid, John. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, of course. Good stock.
Appreciate it. All
Yeah.
right, didn't mean to cut
All
the
right. No,
analysis there,
let's
but
move on. Next trade.
I
Brando.
I
Did you?
I, th- I think you luckily cut off the fantasy baseball
Yeah.
tangent that we were going
It's
down.
not the
So
medium for that. Fantasy baseball is awesome. I love it, but this is football time. Did you? I'm trying to remember. Did you talk about the Waddle trade a lot on the last pod? I feel like
I
you
don't
didn't
think
get to
I don't
walk
think we
us through
really gave it a lot of thought. So I think this is a good point to talk about it because I was going to bring up the 109. You guys have a certain connection to 109. So let's talk about the 110
yep.
first. So going into the draft, or at least like maybe a few weeks out of the draft, I had the 110, which I acquired from Jimmy for Mike Evans. And I remember I was in the car ride home and I'm listening to some stuff, and I was like, Waddle might be in range. So I got home and I sent the offer to John I. was like, DJ Moore and the first round pick for Jalen Waddle and Dontavian Wicks. Dontavian Wicks, a guy like you said about the Packers receivers. I kind of think Wicks is a big time sleeper there, is not really getting the same hype because he wasn't a high draft pick, but a guy that Matt Harmon loves. So I was like, I really want to get in on Wicks early if I can as a throw in. He comes back to me and he says, I'll do it right now if you swap it out if you swap out Waddle for DK Metcalf. And for me, Metcalf is a little too close to DJ Moore. I feel like it's been a lot of hype, but he's never really done it yet. And part of the reason why I wanted to deal DJ Moore is he's in a crowded receiver room, three guys with a rookie quarterback. So I just don't see statistically how he's going to repeat what he did last year. I would have the same problem with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Tyler Lockett, who I still think is a good player in Seattle. So I didn't really want to go that direction. I held firm and I was like, I'll tell you what, I'll throw in Jake Ferguson. Good player, can start at you for tight end, can start at a bye week. So we ended up there. It was DJ Moore, Jake Ferguson, and the 110 in exchange for Waddle and Wicks. And the way I felt was on the Mark Andrews owner, it's just sort of depth for me in terms of Ferguson. So good player, but I wasn't too worried about that. And I sort of look at Dontavian Wicks versus like a Ricky Pearsall or a Lad McConkey, who I could have potentially had at the end there. I like Wicks, like maybe not as much, but he's within shouting distance of those guys to me. So I felt like I was kind of taking the draft pick still, even though I was dealing with it. And I also feel like I got a player Waddle who last offseason, there's no way anyone could have traded for Waddle. He was kind of an untouchable player. So interested for your guys' thoughts, but I definitely felt pretty good about the trade.
Yeah, I think it's a poor form. You got the chirp after where he said he would have accepted the trade without Ferguson. I remember that comment, which I'm like, oh, that's some bad trade karma, man. I'm a believer in that bad juju. Like, just stay away. But I saw that at first. I was just like, like DJ Moore's productive. He's still young. He's like 26. So I was kind of surprised to see the, like you're kind of giving up the 110 in theory just to kind of age down potentially. I know Waddle had like the top 7 season like 2 years back. And he's potentially going to be, the wide receiver one whenever Tyreek does shift off. But if Tyreek's around for the next 2 seasons, that may be a little bit pushed off. Whereas DJ Moore, if Keenan Allen, we don't know how long he's going to, really be impacting him. So if he's the clear number one there, you kind of have the locked in one receiver one, the 110. I valued it, I was looking to get in this year's draft, but it didn't pan out. But figure you could have gotten some youth there if that was part of what you were seeking. But obviously you tacked on Wicks, who I don't know too much about, but from everything I'm hearing, there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of underlying metrics that support that he's just a good, talented young player. And if he does break out in that crowded wide receiver room, then like watch out. Like that could be a huge hit for you if you lock in 2 youthful wide receivers. I know you're contemplating your future potentially. I know you have some age vets there, but if you have that locked in, along with Wilson and Olave, you may not have to retool. You may keep the train running.
Yeah, I like the trade. It's kind of like I viewed it as like a long short bet in a way where you're long on Waddle and Dontavian Wicks, these young ascending receivers, kind of buying the dip, not on Waddle a little bit. But then more, it's like Edwin said, at first glance, you're like, wait, why the hell is he trading more? It's like, oh yeah, well, that room's crowded. Don't forget about Cole Kmet. Don't forget that Caleb Williams is unproven. I know we're anointing him already in a way, but who knows? He could bust. Crazier things have happened. And Rome Odunze is, in theory, the next guy there. So, not that it was a bad deal for Travers. It was a great deal for him, too, because he gets a nice player and more. He gets a start at the time, a starting tight end until I traded him his starting tight end. And he got 110, which he turned into Xavier Worthy. So, again, I like the trade for both sides. Differences of opinions and different valuations are what makes all of this interesting. So,
wary of young Kansas City receivers. Sky Moore owner here. Don't trust them. Don't trust them anymore.
Snake
well,
bit.
apparently Xavier Worthy is better than Brock Bowers, which is news to me. So,
Oh,
I mean,
that is a good transition point. Not to cut you off, Edwin, but
no, go on.
A lot of interest in the 109, which is Jimmy's pick. A pick that I know, talking to Jimmy pre-draft, he was looking to trade down for if Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't there. So Brian Thomas Jr. goes 108, and then Jimmy's looking to move. And I know you guys are both talking to Jimmy at that time. John wanted Brock Bowers. Edwin, we don't know what Edwin wanted. Maybe he'll tell us now. But part of why I wanted to bring this up is a rebuttal opportunity for Edwin, because at the draft, several beers in, Edwin got a little tiffed by a little message he received from Jimmy. There were some negotiations, and Edwin's. Correct me if I summarize anything incorrectly, because I don't have the log in front of me, Edwin. Okay. Some
Yeah,
sort of form, you reach out to Jimmy. You know what? You take the realm. Take the realm, but it better be salty if you're going to take the realm.
no, well, I mean, I'll let you finish your thought there, and I'll give my two
Okay.
cents.
Okay. So my spin doctor version of it is you sit up, you throw your beer, you're pissed, and then you're like, Brandon, you got to see this. Like, I just asked Jimmy, I'm like, listen, Devontae Adams for 109. That offer was on the table. It's confirmed. We have the documentation somewhere. Jimmy says no. Edwin follows up. Are you not interested in the 109 for Adams, or you're not interested at all? Jimmy, at all. I'm not at all. To which Edwin, a few beers in,
Uh,
got pretty offended,
well,
understandably so, kind of a
n-
cocky
not
Jimmy-esque
that.
comment.
I guess I'll step in here, and
Okay.
I don't get. He didn't say not at all. He said he would be interested only if it was a garbage bin offer. That is where I
That's
took
even
offense.
worse. That's even worse.
It's, listen, if you're not interested in Devontae, perfectly fine. If you're not interested in Henry, any of the players on my blog, no offense taken. We can keep it moving. That's all good. I don't force anything down anybody's throat. That's when I was just like, all right. At that point, I think I was probably 6 beers deep. So then I added two more there and just kind of get the fumes going. But
Oh.
but that's where I was like, hold up. Like the 110 was Mike Evans. Yes, he was top 3 last year. He had a great year, but Adams was wide receiver 11, which, okay, some may point out he had 2 huge weeks where he had like 30 points in those games. One, okay, that's a ceiling that he could potentially give you that, but he also had very shaky QB play. He still gave me like, I want to say 8 weeks with double-digit targets, which that's one of those sticky stats that I think is earned. It's not just like hey, he just gets 13 targets just because he's on the field. So I was a little taken aback that I could understand if he said like, yeah, I'm just not interested in, I'm looking for youth, or I'm looking to move back. Like with the deal with John seemed to make sense if that was his goal. All good. It was just more. I feel like Adams is getting a little bit way too disrespected in his value, which is similar to what happened when he moved from the Packers to the Raiders, and he still put up a top 3 season. I think he's still talented. I don't think he lost a step in his play that drastic enough to be a garbage bin offer. I've seen other
Garbage bin
players
off.
go. That's the part that I'm like, all
The
right,
verbiage.
I'm gonna die with him on my roster. I'd rather die than for that to be the case, and I don't give a fuck.
So John,
But
as the one who came in and traded for the 109, we've gone over that. We don't need to go over that again. What are your thoughts on how Jimmy's acting to other owners in the league?
Uh, it's interesting. There's a lot of smug. The South Park episode, drinking the
Oh
smug.
yeah. He did live in San Francisco for a little bit.
Little humility from our champ would be nice, but that's all I'll say. He's earned it. He's done a good job. Startup draft was a gold mine, and he's dominating right now. No signs of stopping. But let's hope the Jimmy three-peat doesn't pan out.
listen, and I know that past performance is not the indicator of it, and like if we're just going off of year-end stats, that doesn't indicate anything for this season. But I think that's where I'm looking at some of the guys that I have on my block. I know that's not necessarily my marketing strategy just to put it all out there, but even with guys like Hopkins, right? Like he had a down year. I think it hurt him going to the Titans. If he wasn't a better system, I think it would have worked out a little bit better. They're investing this year. Who knows if it'll work? But he was wide receiver like 23 last year. And if we're looking at Adams in that same case, you're looking like, okay, well, Adams just got it because there was literally nobody there and like nobody else to compete for targets. Well, Jacoby Myers was wide receiver 24 in our format, right? Like I'm not making it up to say like, oh, well, yeah, like that just happened to be the case. Like, yeah, they had some big weeks. Well, I'm like, there's some guys that are valued much higher uh, where you're looking to pay in and buy in, and it's like, well, Pickens last year, for example, I'm just clicking real time, but like I'm looking, Pickens was wide receiver 26, youthful, talented, has an opportunity this season, but like last year Myers was wide receiver 24. And it's just a matter of like, does that pan out? Is that repeatable? Who knows? There's a lot of young wide receivers stepping in this year, and everybody's taking their dart throws. But if you're a contender, you take a dart throw on these rookies. They may take time to pan out. Whereas buying in on the vets, they're there for a reason, right? They've done it before. The bottom may fall out, but like these rookies may not pan out until year 2, year 3. So if you're just panning on that, does make sense to buy in. So that's where the step right up slogan comes in handy.
Rookie mania really took hold. I mean, right now I'm like thrilled that I got the guys I have. But come week 3, they haven't done a thing. They turn into Jonathan Mingo again. Really wish I had taken Tony Pollard for a second or something like that. Just interesting time of year.
It is true. It's interesting. And like, I feel like I'll always land on like, I tend to go vets over young players for that reason. I do think like the elite young players, you almost have to get them through the draft. Otherwise, you're paying through the nose. But for the most part, I do agree, Edwin. Like, I'd rather spend a draft pick to go out and get a guy I know is a proven producer. And there's value in that. Like, versus like a guy like Xavier Worthy, who like I don't know. He's pretty small. Mahomes spread the ball around. It doesn't seem like they want another Tyreek Hill. So I do want to defend John here in terms of the trade up to 109. Because I know on the last pod, like I didn't even mean for it, but we kind of analyzed like, well, I was just curious, what would you have done? Would he have fallen? And John adamantly was like, no, I wouldn't have gone. Like, first of all, he doesn't know that he wouldn't have gone Brock Bowers over Xavier Worthy. There's a little bit of Monday morning quarterback
What
going
if
on
Jim
there.
took Xavier Worthy?
Yep.
Texas connection there.
It,
If
it,
Jim stays at 109, takes Worthy, John and Travers are at 10, Brock Bowers versus Ladd versus Pearsall. That's a different conversation.
and we know he didn't love Ladd or Pearsall, so you're exactly right. And secondly, John, you don't know that as an owner in the league. That's part of it. You're kind of making your bets. You're looking at your stack board. Brock Bowers is up there, and you're like, this is my time to make a move. So I love that move. I love the aggressiveness, and I wanted to defend you a little bit. And Xavier Worthy, I'm sorry. Like he's just gonna be a bit piece on that Chiefs offense. You can count it in right now. And my final pot shot at John I here is Roman Wilson blows. He straight up blows. He's not good. Get a reception perception membership. The guy can't get open. And to draft him over Jermaine Burton, who is a head case in and of his own, but in terms of the on-field film, not some not some guy watching college football at home on his couch. Matt Harmon watching the film said Burton was his fourth receiver in this class, off-field questions aside. Roman Wilson is terrible. It was an awful pick.
I couldn't believe that those two players were flopped. I was at 3-4 right behind the Roman Wilson, then Burton picks, which Tam, huge pick at 3-3 for Burton. Great pick by him. I was praying that Burton would fall to me there. Didn't, obviously. But I was surprised Travers, John, I went with a little diminutive kind of receiver coming from a run first offense. Didn't get great reviews by Lord Harmon. So
But John saw that throw from JJ McCarthy that everyone was all up in their arms about on Twitter, and that alone was enough to do it.
yeah,
Yeah, it, and speaking on the draft, obviously, like I tried to trade in for the 106 with John I. I think he didn't want to necessarily take all the scratch tickets at first with the 3 QBs, but for a rebuilding team, I mean, who knows if that's gonna pan out. If it does, like he said last podcast, like that's huge for him. But I feel like the odds are tough that 3 of them are all gonna hit. I did try to get in there and make it happen, but I feel like I didn't have enough attractive pieces. I feel like it's just right now he's still saying like he's not contending. I feel like that's gonna change come mid-year because he is in the perceived weaker division in theory for the path, like he could buy in and just make a playoff run. He did buy Kittle, so I'm curious if he's really not actually going to go for it. I feel like that may change once we actually get the game started.
For sure. I was trying to trade up to 1-6 and I would have taken Bowers there. I had him
Wow.
more better than McCarthy, better than Drake May. I'm not buying a quarterback from the Pats, no chance.
Wow.
I had him over Worthy, over Brian Thomas. So yeah, I was thrilled to get him at 1-9. Gave up 2 seconds. Essentially, me and Jimmy swapped thirds in that deal too, but I pretty much gave up 2 seconds to get a blue chip prospect who, before the landing spot was known, was kind of the unanimous 1-5, 1-6 pick. So yeah, I'm happy to have him on my team. If he's 75% as good as people are kind of raving about, then he's my tight end for the next 8 years. So
Talent transcends sometimes, and look, I feel a little bit we're going in on John I, but
no,
amazing addition to the league. And quite
100%.
frankly, at some point, I'm going to green light Travers being usurped out of his position because John's been that good.
no.
Yeah, I think it's a great addition for entertainment, for chirping, for all trades, all the above.
And just
I think it's naturally he does invite some chirping his way.
kudos to his rebuild. I mean, he took this garbage team, paper thin, and now I would say he's the sixth, fifth best team in the league. Like he's turned it around so fast, given he's banking on a lot of rookies kind of panning out, but he showed giant balls trading Mahomes. Same
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
Waddle. It's kind of, I love that this league, there are no sacred cows in this league. So, but yeah, he's done an awesome job the last year turning his team from trash to treasure. So kudos to John and Travers, I suppose.
So I know we're sitting right here. I'm not going to give out the time because, don't want to sell anyone out
I got
to other
five,
people in the league.
10
But
more minutes.
all right, yep, I absolutely have that myself. I know we've covered a lot. We didn't leave you a lot of time. John, you did a lot of pre-show prep on the draft. We're welcome to go into that now. If you'd rather save it for another pod, I know there's going to be plenty of opportunity this summer too. So, totally your idea.
See, I think I'll show it and then we'll go and we'll talk. We'll look at each kind of draft class. Yeah, so what I did was just I looked at everybody's draft class to see one, how many picks they had because I hadn't tallied it up before. Thought that would be interesting. And then to see how much value in terms of just kind of player value that they added to their team. And so I'd use 3 sites. Let me see if I can share this. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Can you?
Yep, updating that right now should be good.
And it fell the way. So I used Keep Trade Cut, Fantasy Pros, and this other random site. And basically it assigns values to each of the rookies. It's like 3,000 points here. Fantasy Pros kind of whittles it down where it's like 40, 50 points if it's a good player. And then the other site's more like Keep Trade Cut where it's in the thousands. So I looked at each team, how many picks they had. Let me see. There we go. Share. All right, can you see it here?
Coming up. Yep, we got it.
Okay. So just to show it, so Keep Trade Cut where the values for like certain players are huge. And then Fantasy Pros where they're in the single digits. I don't think anyone's over 100. And this other site was more like the Keep Trade Cut in terms of just calibration, I guess.
I'm just
So
gonna take a drink of my beer. I see where I rank on all of these.
Yeah.
first thing that sticks out is Travers and John I and Tam had 8 picks apiece, 16 of the 40 picks. So that's pretty crazy. Then we had 3 teams who had 1 or fewer picks, which is insane. I don't think we've seen that before. Maybe one year Ben had like no picks or 1 pick.
I don't think Edwin had a pick last year,
Oh,
Yeah.
but that
really?
was a 3 round too. This is a 4 round.
Oh, right. That's what I'm thinking. It's
Yeah.
you fan it out another 10 picks. It's crazy that the concentration. So yeah, so we had 2 teams with 8 picks, and then 5 teams with 4 or 5 and 3 with 1 or fewer. Commissioner DeFreitas had 0. And so I summed up the value of each team. I think keep trade cut. I mean, it's a trade calculator, so take it for what it's worth, but it's a benchmark. I wouldn't say it's good or bad. It's just a benchmark. Now, and it fell the exact way you would kind of think, where Ianello Travers added 40,000 points of value to their team, just in terms of players. I didn't back out the draft pick value to see where the margin was because I don't know, draft picks are tough to value. So, and I just didn't have the time. So obviously but just kind of comparing 8 picks, 40K to 30K. Ianello Travers duo really added serious value to their team. And then I averaged it out. So their impact per pick. And like 5,000 was their average pick, which is pretty crazy. So then I have it with source data over here. You look at it, it's like Caleb Williams, 7,000 points. I think he was the highest rookie aside from Marv. Those two alone, 15, 16K. So it kind of came out, like I said, as you thought. I did sort it by like kind of the oomph, your value per pick, which was interesting that Mark kind of leapfrogged Tam here, where his
Yeah,
average
because
pick
yeah,
is more valuable. I think that's some of these sites really value JJ McCarthy, so he definitely got a boost from that. And that was interesting to see. So it was an exercise, just kind of see. It felt basically exactly how I thought. Me and
Well, I
Jim
guess
were right there.
I was gonna say that's one thing that jumped out at me, right? Like we're talking about Jimmy, he's the strongest team right now, projected to do the three-peat. And if you're looking at this draft class, it looks like he's right up there with the value when he's what, top five or yeah, top five it looks like on average. And you're thinking, yeah, the top four makes sense. They were the sellers, and then all of a sudden Jimmy's right there. He managed to get good value this draft class as well. So it looks like he didn't take much of a hit, at least in replenishing the bullets for that lineup.
yeah, it's a lot easier when you have his startup draft. Let's just throw that out
He's
there.
playing with house money. He has been for 2 years.
I mean, that's why he can scoff at Devontae Adams, right? Like when you you just
Yeah,
rebuild this with the youth,
it doesn't mean you need
you
to
don't need you don't need
it doesn't give
my
you a
old.
license. You don't get a license to treat people like that, though.
Yeah, I think Keon Coleman was weighted pretty heavily in some of these, which I don't know. I mean,
What a joke.
he doesn't show
I
up
need more
well
Brandon
in
in me.
some
I
of
need,
those metrics. His production and his combine 40 was really bad from what I recall, but his other numbers were pretty good. His stats were solid, but he's not like a pure wide receiver from what I remember with you can tell us the Harmon right up Brando, but isn't it like he doesn't separate? He's he is kind of limited route tree, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
very similar, and he's not great against press man. Not great against man coverage to begin with. So it's like, how many of those guys become high volume guys in the league? It's a very small list. So it's tough. I'm not a huge Keon Coleman guy myself for that reason. Although I do like him quite a bit better than I like Roman Wilson.
pop, 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 pop,
Yeah.
shot fired.
And at one
Well,
six, I think is where he got him. It's a good pick. Can't fault him. We'll see. Hopefully it doesn't work out because the Bills, I don't want them to get a nice player, but
yeah, and I guess looking at the other takeaway here, Mark, he came away with good value there, and I know that he made that huge trade with Dietz at the deadline for
Hmm.
Jacobs. That 104, I think like kind of bailed him out of his selling season because he was holding steady. Which maybe that's the lesson to take away, kids, is don't settle. Hold on to your guys until the trade deadline and just squeeze these owners because it seems to work for him, and I look in that like he really, like you said, he leapfrogged Tam, who's been in the sell-off mode, for some time, and Mark still got that value right in there, made that trade and made it happen. Curious to see if he decides to creep in here like by next season he's ready to go again. Not sure if anybody has heard from Tam if he intends on continuing to sort of sell this season or contend. He may be just quietly plotting, and we're all just kind of assuming he won't, and then he comes in guns blazing.
Jokes aside, I think Tam's the opposite of Jimmy, where he had the disaster startup draft. And that takes a lot to come back from. I mean, especially when like your first round pick, even if it's a lottery every year, is only one player with our deep rosters. So he's had a long build in front of him, like to defend him a little bit. And then the inverse is Jimmy, where you hit on so many guys. You get Amon Ra out of nowhere. Like a
Ayuk.
lot of things break
Or
your way. You draft CMC first overall in a super flex, and Hurts and Burrow fall into your lap. Like when that happens, yeah, you can afford to be a little bit of a dunce in trades and like sit back and be like, oh, I don't need to pay you anything more than a 2 for Adams.
Was that the
literally
Ollie
everything
laugh?
he does works. So
Yeah.
oh,
So my point is like I think Tam's the inverse of it, where he's had a lot of work to do, more work than anyone after that startup, which is it's tough luck too. Like some of the guys he picked just really flopped.
I mean, I haven't had any luck in these drafts at all. Like, see Kenny Pickett, Sky Moore. That's just, but that's what goes to show. Some of these picks, sometimes, we clutch onto them, and we just like think like, yes, like I'm holding on, and like that the value's there. But like anything can break out. And I don't claim to be an expert, but I mean, I'm relying on these experts, right? Like we have 3 sources here telling us like the value or regulative, whatever. And then you make your picks and like you just hope for the best. But like a lot of times it could just doesn't pan out, or just you got to wait a while before even you see some return on that.
Where did these rankings have Spencer Rattler? I know a hot topic on the
Oh,
league.
was
the
at
worst pick.
1,900 points
How
or
dare he?
so. Spencer Rattler. I thought it was kind of high, I suppose. Let me see if I can share. I have the draft up. Let me see about this.
Well, I remember looking at the board at the time. Actually, I'll admit that I was eyeing him just because I'm the car owner and figure out just hedge, see if something comes from
I think
that.
that was a
Um,
pure taxi squad play, I assume, because everyone else has to wait until the season starts to add that fifth QB. So Ben decided to do it now, which you can't fault him for. Where's yeah, do you guys see the draft board?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of Edwin's team,
Oh boy.
tell us about this Xavier Legette trade. You
Oh
pried
yeah.
away a second round pick from Mark, which is not easy. So
Mark has a monopoly on the second rounders, by the way, next season. He has 5 of them. Just a
We'll
heads up
return
for the
to
league.
that.
Yeah, for Leggett, I figured I was just antsy that I was just sitting there not picking anybody. Mark put him at the block. He said like the 210, is on the block if anybody wants to get in there. And I was like, all right, I have a 2025 second, which was John B's, and I threw in a third, my 2025 third. So I sent a second and a third for the 210 this year. I don't know too much really about Leggett, to be honest. I knew he went in the first round, and I saw like in some of the like the fantasy pros, like the value, he was still projected to be like potentially a top 10 wide receiver for this class. So I figure I'm like, well, this is my shot to try and get some youth at the wide receiver position. And definitely one where I need some of that. So I tried to just get aggressive, get a guy that went in the first round and get something in there. Obviously now he's questionable, so I'm like, okay, great. I traded for someone who's hurt, but that was my thought process: just get youth at a guy that may have some upside and went in the first round.
you could pay a third to take a 25 second, make it a 24 second.
Yep, basically. And in theory, John B. second may be a later one, so I'm thinking it's a late pick. And from what I'm hearing, the GOAT draft class, a second this year is more like closer to a first. You know, if it was a high second, it's closer to a first, mid second, whatever, all
Yeah.
that. So I'm like, all right, maybe I'm getting value here. Who knows? I don't really trust the Panthers in general. I was more so just going off of if this guy went in the first round for NFL for guys that get paid to do this. I figure I'm like, all right, that there might be some value there. But I don't know what Matt Harmon may say. He's trash. So Brandon's gonna let me know real
Lord
quick.
Harmon, the Church of Harmon.
Though what I did want to point out quickly is I don't know how much is going to show on YouTube, but there are three Adonai Mitchell tabs open on John's browser at the
Oh, yeah.
top there. So
I
the
do have to go in a couple minutes, but
confirmation bias season is definitely in full swing.
I don't have enough time to defend Adonai Mitchell. I see
I love Adonai Mitchell.
criticisms, I see the concerns, but this
look at
speaking of
those
the Harmon,
percentiles.
that looks like an 84th and an 83rd man press
Oh,
Yep.
percentile there. And his zone is still over 76. These combine numbers look pretty spiffy. 18-year-old true freshman starting outside wide receiver for the national champion Georgia Bulldogs, winning touchdown against Alabama. Next
I'm a
year,
fan. I'm right there with
touchdown in
you.
the national championship again, his sophomore year.
I think John came ready for war on this one.
Moved to Texas to be closer to his daughter in part. So character.
There you go. There you go.
There are
Team
concerns,
Chem.
diabetic, all that. So 52nd overall pick, he's George Pickens in my mind. Similar. He does things that are just special. The way he contorts his body, the way his quickness with routes. Contested catch pretty good, but more just like ability to track the ball was insane. Like you see that his highlight play is like that levitation catch he had against Washington, where he just friggin' he like was in the air and he like triple clutched and then full extension, sick catch. And he showed up when the lights were the brightest. Touchdown against Washington. Ranked teams. 100 yards and touchdown against Oklahoma State. 150 yards and a touchdown, Kansas State. OU bad. 141 yards and a touchdown against Kansas. Alabama, 2 touchdowns. He made Kool-Aid McKinstry look bad. So at 208,
I loved it.
pretty good upside pick in a normal draft. I think he might go 108. And the draft class isn't so deep. So Adonai is kind of my flag plant for this rookie class, which we'll see. I know.
You have a believer in me. He was actually one of my targets at 110 until the NFL draft. He fell a little bit. I'm such a draft capital guy where he was out of my consideration at 110 at that point, but a player I really like, and clearly you can see the Hardman results. John, I'm going to save you from yourself. You have a dinner to get to. We don't want you to get in trouble.
3-year-old.
Yeah, I want to thank both of you guys for joining. It's been awesome. It's been a lot of fun. Apologies to the league. I was definitely extra salty for this one, but hopefully it ends up bringing a little bit more entertainment to listening. We love you all. It's been a great league. Thank you for joining, guys, and I look forward to having you guys back on.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for having us.
Have a
For
good
sure.
one.
All right. Well, from the All Aboard Podcast, I'm Brandon DeFreitas. We'll see you next time. Catch you guys later.